worked through some technology issues. Technology, can't live with it, can't live without it, I guess. Anyway, welcome to the Are You Ready seminar on emergency preparedness. I am Dan Wurtzel. I'm the president of FirstService Residential, which is the largest residential management company in New York City, with more than 500 co-op, condos, and rental properties under our management. We are delighted today to have two highly distinguished gentlemen joining our panel. Salvatore Cassano is Commissioner of the New York City Fire Department, the largest in the world with more than 16,000 fire, EMS, and civilian members. The Commissioner has over 44 years of experience with the FDNY and has held every uniformed rank. Commissioner Cassano served as the FDNY's Chief of Department, the highest ranking uniform officer from 2006 through 2010, overseeing many of the agency's most important bureaus, including fire, EMS operations, training, safety, fire prevention, and communications. Welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Also today joining us is Ira Tannenbaum, is Director of Public-Private Initiatives for the New York City Office of Emergency Management. Mr. Tannenbaum is responsible for designing and implementing programs to maximize the coordination of corporate and municipal emergency management measures and resources within New York City. Mr. Tannenbaum previously served as a preparedness specialist with OEM's Health and Medical Planning and Preparedness Division, where he was involved in the preparedness programs for terrorism response, as well as projects focused on improving the coordination and response of the health and medical systems to major events that may affect the city. He has served as an adjunct professor of emergency management at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, has an MBA with a focus in healthcare administration, and has been an active EMT in a local volunteer ambulance service for more than a decade. Welcome, Ira. Thank you. Over the last 15 years, the management industry has dealt with significant events that have reshaped the way we do business. 9/11 was one of those events. The blackout of 2003 was another. Several crippling snowstorms, and more recently, the path of destruction from Superstorm Sandy. Each one of these events became teaching points within the industry on how to deal with significant impacting events in the future, and created a closer working relationship between our industry and the city. I'd like to now show a short video clip.
New York City, America's preeminent metropolis. 8 million people, the most densely populated urban center in the United States. But this enormous city's population and geography make it especially vulnerable to emergencies. If a fire, hurricane, or blackout occurs, are you prepared?
New York City is no stranger when it comes to the forces of nature. We've been hit by hurricanes, heat waves, and winter storms. But we're also vulnerable to disasters such as power outages, building collapses, and fires.
From flash floods to tornadoes, weather extremes have been on the rise. As a result, New York's aging water, power, and transportation grids may be disrupted.
So, I'm now going to walk you through a series of pictures that will remind everyone in this room what we were dealing with as a result of Superstorm Sandy, which has now become the baseline for emergency preparedness for future weather events. As we know now, once-in-a-lifetime storms have a probability of occurring more frequently. Of 140, out of our portfolio of 500 buildings, we had 140 buildings that were damaged by Superstorm Sandy, 40 of which sustained significant destruction. Before, during, and after the storm, our priority was to protect the the safety and lives of our residents, thousands of whom were displaced from their homes. Our senior management team, and what you're looking at is a picture of our main office, immediately mobilized to create a command center at our headquarters. Having a central point of oversight for our property managers in the field was invaluable. Despite power outages, property damage, and transportation challenges faced by our associates and for everybody, they immediately began to visit impacted buildings to mitigate life-threatening situations, assess the damage, and do everything they can to restore vital services. Here's a snapshot of damage at Dayton Beach Park. A picture of destruction at Dayton Towers. At the Oceana condominium, a scene like this only seems like a bad dream a few days before the storm hit. Unfortunately, this is a typical boiler room that was inundated by floodwaters at 711 Montauk Terrace Co-op. A canopy turned upside down and landed on a car at Seacoast Towers. A building in Lower Manhattan at 88 Greenwich Street. This is a flooded basement. Destroyed about every central building system and required a complete evacuation of the building. We arranged for teams of contractors, and this is now on the response side, experts in equipment, including engineers, architects, plumbers, electricians, pump experts, air quality experts, project managers, locally and nationally, to guide the restoration process. To accelerate the rebuilding process, many of our buildings and many buildings throughout New York City needed funds. We established a $10 million Hurricane Sandy Recovery Fund that allowed properties to fund immediately while they waited for insurance proceeds to go through their process. We mobilized scores of volunteers to go door to door in our devastated properties to check our residents and work with New York City and various charities to get food, water, medical supplies to those most in need. We are proud to have been able to help our properties return to normal operations as quickly as possible, an experience that has made us and the industry much wiser as the value of emergency preparedness. Turning to today's program, I will be posing a series of questions to our panelists who will address how each of their organizations would handle various situations. I will also be adding some commentary from the management perspective as well. So, since we just talked about Sandy, there are other types of emergencies and we will get to them, but the lessons, I want to just turn our focus to the lessons learned following the events like Superstorm Sandy. Based on that experience, what do the FDNY and OEM recommend that a building do today to help protect against future damage from flooding and potential power loss? So, Commissioner, I'll start with you.
Okay. Well, first of all, you actually have to have a good plan. While we think that we're never going to get hit with a storm, with a blackout, we get hit with them, with a blizzard. So you have to have a plan. You have to make sure that you are prepared. You have to have a kit, and you have to have a go kit. You have to make sure that you have batteries in stock, water in stock, your flashlight. We recommend that you don't use candles because candles are very dangerous, but batteries and flashlights do work. We recommend that if you lose power and you have to use a generator, you actually know how to use a generator. You don't store fuel. You don't have the generator inside. You don't create carbon monoxide carbon monoxide. And let me just backtrack. The first thing you should do is have a smoke alarm and a carbon monoxide alarm in your home. Make sure that it works. Make sure that you change the battery twice a year. Change your clock. Change your battery. For those of you that don't know, there's a new state-of-the-art smoke alarm that's on the market. 10-year sealed battery. You don't have to change the battery for 10 years. It's a sealed unit. It's being manufactured. It's in your local stores now. Whatever brand is there, it's a 10-year sealed battery. So those are some of the easy things. Prepare for the event. Make sure that you have a plan in place, have a checklist. Make sure that every one of your family members knows about it. And, Ira will give you some other tips that OEM will put out. We have a nice bulletin for you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Emergency management is about solving problems. So I would just say, to second what the commissioner said, there are two aspects that we like to talk about. One is what to educate your residents about their ability to do and their ability to prepare, but also as an operation, as an organization, make sure that each building knows exactly what is going on in their basement. I think we saw for a lot of organizations after Sandy, where there was damage in their basement or their equipment, there was a lot of debate or discussion. When was it installed? What was the manufacturer? Who has the blueprints? Who has the documentation? The warranty, etc. So I think making sure that you know who your vendors are, what equipment you actually have, and where it is, and how it's hooked up. To have the right experts there. Make sure you have that in advance is going to help you recover much quicker.
Okay. No, those are all very good points, and I want to add a few other things because, buildings now that are in flood zones need to be more significantly prepared and work on infrastructure. We have to properly mobilize and continue to provide essential services if possible via backup generators and adequate fuel supplies. Now, not every building is capable of doing that. So in buildings without emergency power, management, staff, and residents need to be prepared in advance, okay? Commissioner talked about to-go kits, flashlights, fresh supply of batteries, glow sticks, water, things that are really essential are very important. We need to also have emergency mitigation teams on standby so that when something does occur, it doesn't become a chaotic process to get vendors there. Obviously, with an event like Superstorm Sandy, the local vendors were overwhelmed. It's just, nobody was ready for something of that magnitude. So it's really important that if we know that a storm may be coming or there's a potential for a storm, that we're able to mobilize the proper resources so that when it does hit, the recovery process can start expeditiously. Also, a plan, a sort of a communication plan in place. Because I think one of the key elements to dealing with an event like Superstorm Sandy is how do we get the word out? How do residents know what's going on? And there are several components to that. I mean, with technology today, even though we started 10 minutes late because we had a little bit of a technology glitch, but to be able to communicate to residents with mass communication, emails, having a customer service center, which we happen to have, so that if residents can't receive emails, but they have access to a telephone, are able to call in and to find out, hey, what's going on at my building? Real important. The other thing is, I think from a physical standpoint, those buildings, and I don't know, by a show of hands, how many buildings were affected by Superstorm Sandy? Okay, a few. And for those buildings that were affected, it's like, okay, what measures can we take now to kind of prevent or minimize the impact that we had from Superstorm Sandy? And some of the things that we've done at buildings that we've been involved in, installing high-velocity sump pumps, raising the electrical panels and critical equipment above the ground, okay? We relocate air intake vents, okay, so instead of them being right at the ground level, to raise them up. Installed floor drains, all right, with ejector pits. Cogeneration plant or a generation plant to provide power, because one of the key elements to working all this equipment is to having power to work it. So if the power grid goes down, we then need to have a backup power supply. And making sure that backup power supply is not vulnerable to incoming water. So those are some of the things that you can do both from a preparedness side and what happens after or during and after the storm. Now, I don't want this to be all about Superstorm Sandy, because it's not. It's about several other types of emergency preparedness, emergencies that can occur. But the one other thing that I did mention, and I just want to reemphasize, is communication. And I want to just sort of spend a little bit of time on that. And I don't know, from the fire department and OEM's perspective, how do you recommend, or what do you recommend regarding how best to communicate with residents during an emergency?
Sure. Well, I'm proud to say that as a city, we've been working closely, the major response agencies, to develop a program, hopefully many of you have heard about it, called Notify NYC. Notify NYC is a system, it's our public notification system that we encourage every resident, everybody who lives in the city to register for, to be able to get some of those important notifications about emergencies that are occurring in their zip code, where they live, or even where they work. We have our 24 hours a day, 7-day-a-week watch command that works with the Fire Department Operations Center and the Police Department to make sure that we're monitoring things that are happening throughout the city. And this is, again, being able to put information directly into the hands of your residents and everyone who lives in the city. And I have some cards I'll pass out afterwards, some information about how you can register, and again, how you can get information to your residents and to your members so that you can encourage them to register as well.
Commissioner?
For another way to communicate with the FDNY is we have a Facebook and a Twitter page. You can get alerts from Facebook and Twitter. Just twitter.com/FDNY or facebook.com FDNY home. We will alert you and notify you of ongoing emergencies or preparedness, and you can follow us for just normal events as well. But you can use it as a communications tool. It's a very good one.
Okay, so for residents, there are lots of pieces of communication here. And one of the things that, from the management perspective, is how does a management company obtain accurate information? And are there, about emergency situations and from either the fire department, the OEM, or other agencies?
So that's a great question. We do have a program called CorpNet, CORPNET, that is more appropriate for safety professionals, business continuity professionals, or folks that are running operations for a large organization. It's a little bit more significant information about incidents that are going on across the city. So that's what I would recommend for a management company that has several locations across the city. They'll get some of that additional information about incidents from Watch Command, and as well as the notify messages that their residents would be seeing at the same time. So you can go to our website, or you can go to nyc.gov/corpnet, CORPNET, to register for that system.
That's what I would recommend. And as well as Facebook and Twitter and some of the other social medias. We're very involved in the social media aspect of communications. It's a great communications tool.
So we're really we're spending some time on communication because it is so critical before, during, and after an event on how to get information, how information is communicated to the residents. And we mentioned, or I mentioned a little bit earlier, that having a mass communication tool, having a customer care center so that residents are able to contact somebody who will have specific information about your building is so critical. But some of the other things really have to come from the residents themselves. And one of the things that is really important, and I keep using the word critical, I'll try to find another word, and before the end of the session I will, but one of the things that occurs when we have a major event, like a fire or something like that, it heightens the awareness of all residents of what to do and how to deal with a fire. But what happens over time is that, a few years later, people kind of fall back to their normal routines, and all of a sudden they're not sharp about what to do in a fire. And we see this time and again, and it's not, the blame is not on the residents. I think the responsibility is with management to reinforce the communication of how to deal with particular emergencies. All right, we've started programs in many of our buildings where the fire department or OEM will come in and talk to the residents. We'll have an evening where, you know, there's an open forum and we have a presentation. And even though there's never been a fire in this particular building, it's so important for people to know what to do in the event of a fire. We get annual notices about, you know, what you're supposed to do in the event of a fire with the fire safety notices. But I have a feeling that those notices are looked at best glanced at for a couple of minutes, and then they find their way to a place where nobody knows what they are. One of the other things that we started to do is we have put this together for every single one of our buildings and started distributing it. And I'm not going to ask anyone to guess what it says on here. I'll read it for you. But this is a personal life safety guidebook. And it basically covers all the important emergency events and what you need to do. And the reason we have it sort of in a nice plastic case is so that you can put it somewhere that you can refer to in the event that there's an emergency coming up, like a weather event, and it allows you to have easy access to information that, you know, quite frankly, we all can't memorize, all right? So this is really important, and I think it really helps on the communication side for educating residents on how to handle any type of an event. So the other thing, and from our standpoint, there are other like non-negotiables, all right, on what we need to do in conducting our business. We have to continually update resident data, okay? We need to know who's in each apartment, how many people live in those apartments. Are there any